All right, everybody. So, we're going to be doing a review for Fast X. Fast X is the 10th installment of the Fast and Furious franchise. Back again is the crew of Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto. Here, he's facing off against a new threat. This time coming in with Jason Momoa, who Jason Momoa has a connection with the crew because he's the son of the villain they faced off against in the fifth Fast and Furious film. If you remember that one, I think
Herman Reyes.
And I think for generally most people, the fifth one is considered the best Fast and Furious movie for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Marley, you're the Fast.
I think that's a general.
Oh, I was gonna say, I mean, you're the Fast and Furious expert, so yeah.
But yeah, I do love this entire franchise just for it being completely absurd, and I think the general consensus is that Fast 5 is the best one. I love Tokyo Drift. I think I'm like the odd one out there because not a lot of people like that movie, but it's got my favorite character in it, and Justin Lin started, like, basically revived like this franchise with like his like incredible direction. But Fast 5 is generally well loved.
Yeah, and speaking of the director, speaking of Justin Lin, he did not return to come back and do Fast 10. There was a lot of situations going on behind the scenes, a lot of behind the scenes issues there that Justin Lin left the project, and then Louis Terrier came on to the project. Louis Terrier, he did such movies as he did The Incredible Hulk for the MCU all the way back in 2008. He also did Clash of the Titans. You don't like Incredible Hulk?
That's kind of like on the bad side of the MCU before they kind of made their little turnaround.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
It was the second movie of the MCU. After Iron Man. So yeah, it's kind of the very, very early beginnings there. So you have him kind of coming on, who he filled the shoes of Justin Lin after his departure. Does he do a good job? Well, hey, we'll let you know. So, like I said, that's the basic setup here. They have this new villain kind of you have to face off against, Jason Momoa, who is your all-around bad guy. He's this rich guy. He's a super terrorist. He's also a professional driver. Also, he can do hacking. Also, he knows kung fu. Also, he's just a good Renaissance man. He can do all the evil shit. He can do all of it. He drives around in a purple car, wearing amazing outfits. I mean, Jason Momoa in this movie, I mean, he's Joker Brober. I mean, that's what he is. He's that's kind of just what he's doing here. And Jason Momoa, he's a guy that if you watch him in much stuff, he's not very dynamic. When you watch him in Dune, he's Jason Momoa. When you watch him in Aquaman, he's Jason Momoa. Like, you don't really get much range here with kind of Jason Momoa. And here, he's still kind of Jason Momoa, but with a little bit more of an evil nature to him, which I thought interjected a lot of life into this movie. Like I said, you have your returning characters of this franchise that are back: Tyrese Gibson, Michelle Rodriguez, Ludacris, Nathalia Emmanuel, Jordana Brewster. You also have John Cena, who is a newer addition to the family. He came in the last Fast and Furious movie, F9, which I was talking to some people on Twitter, and I guess F9 isn't that well liked either, really. It doesn't seem like the movie's not very well liked, like maybe some other movies in the franchise. Again, I'm going to defer to Marley. Is that kind of the general consensus with F9, that a lot of the fans kind of not messing?
I've only seen F9 once in the theater, and I own it on Blu-ray, and I've only finished it maybe like one more time. I always fall asleep like during it. Like it's I wouldn't say it's like completely hated. Like Hobbs and Shaw, I think everyone kind of like hates like completely, but F9 just kind of took like a weird direction where it became really meta, and it just kind of like it kind of went too far out there. It's like they were reading the Reddit forums a little bit too well, and kind of did everything that all the Reddit users were kind of asking for. So it's basically it's basically meme the movie. So
Yeah. Because that was where Tyrese, he like almost became like self-aware almost. He was like, wait, how are we surviving all
Yeah.
this? Like he gained supernatural sentience. He almost became like a
He
watcher.
gained sentience.
You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it's like, how are we surviving all this kind of crazy shit that's happening? So that was that one. Which I don't really remember much from F9. If I remember, I was like, okay, I don't really remember much from that
You
one.
just recounted the most memorable scene in it.
Oh, where Tyrese gained all this sentience, basically.
Yeah, when they got into they went to space almost.
Yeah.
That was probably the most them and reuniting with Lucas Black and the characters from Tokyo Drift and them going to space. That's probably the most memorable scene aside from Vin Diesel breaking the laws of physics with a semi, running outside the back and then jumping out of it. Or the second time he does that when he's going across a bridge, hooks on the axle on his car and lets whatever they call gravity in those movies, which isn't gravity at all,
Yeah.
to go on the other side. Those are like the most memorable moments in that movie, honestly.
Yeah. So John Cena is returning from the last movie. Who in this one, he's coming back as the long lost brother Jacob, who in Fast 10 is almost a completely separate character than he was in F9. Like if you go from straight from that movie to this one, it's like it seems like he's a completely different character. It's like John Cena really did turn into Ernest. Not only does he kind of look like him, he almost kind of turned into him as well.
Buff Ernest.
Yeah, buff Ernest.
he turned into Peacemaker.
Yeah, I say yeah, a little bit like Peacemaker. Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah. I mean, it's basically it's drawn on that, which I thought he was a lot of fun, and I thought him and Jason Momoa really, when the movie was with them, that's when I think the most enjoyable parts of it are. You also do have a returning baddie, also from the. I think she got introduced in Fate of the Furious. Was it Charlize Theron who comes back as Cypher, who makes a return in this? And some other new additions include Brie Larson, who's Tess in this, who's another government agent that they're working with, as well as Alan Hitchinson, I believe is his name, Jack Reacher. He was in that. Alan Richardson, Jack Reacher, who also is another mysterious government agent that they are also that's also in the movie as well. So I'm gonna pass it around, get you guys' thoughts on it, get you guys' opinion on it. Marley, what are your thoughts on Fast X?
I think it's like if you're going into the 10th movie in like this franchise, which I still can't believe that we're reviewing the 10th movie in a like in the Fast and Furious franchise, you have to know like what you're going in for. It's like it's going to be over the top, it's going to be crazy, it's going to just it's you're going to see like a lot of stunts, and I feel like they mostly delivered like with that, and I was having like a really great time. The only problem that I have that kind of like just dropped the score like dramatically on my letterbox is that it feels like the longest time and just recently became like a 3-part finale. This movie feels unfinished, like on so many ways. The way it just ends, like for me, like no spoilers, obviously, but I felt like I needed like some sort of closure for this. And I know like this is kind of like very popular like in like the film industry too, like especially if you're having a finale, like you have to drag it out. Like Harry Potter did this with part 1 and part 2 for Deathly Hallows, and then Dune is also doing this with a 3-part kind of like trilogy. And I like I don't, and having like a movie stand on its own is really important for me. But I generally had a good time. So
Okay. I'm going to come back to your statement about the whole part about this is supposed to be closing out, because this 10th movie, they said like, okay, this is supposed to start a trilogy leading up into a 12th movie, where there's going to finally be like, this is done. We're not going to do any more Fast and Furious after when we get to the 12th movie. So it's building an arc, so to speak, from 10 to 12. But I'm going to get back to that in a minute. Dusk, let me get your thoughts on Fast X.
Yeah, well, I'm not as big of a fan as Marley is. No offense, I enjoy them from time to time. it's really fascinating to look at the franchise as a whole and seeing what it was. I'm almost curious if someone saw the first Fast and the Furious and then suddenly went into a coma and then you woke them up and you went, oh, he's like a, and they went, oh man, so much has changed. What's it? Well, Fast 10 just came out. That they made 10 of those? Oh yeah, it's a whole franchise. Okay. I'd like to watch that, see what it is. And I would love to see their faces dumbfounded as it just got progressively crazier and crazier. And regardless how you kind of feel about the progressiveness, craziness of this film, there are enjoyable moments to gain from it as long as you understand what you're getting yourself into. This movie right from the start tells you right away, we're going to be ridiculous. We're just not going to make a whole lot of sense. If you have any sense of gravity or care about laws of physics, then you just need to leave. Because ain't none of that going to happen here. So at least I appreciated that I let it know early. The tone is set fairly early. But aside from that tone and the many, many callbacks from many different characters, like, oh my god, you see one character's like, oh my god, that's like a cousin of another character, or I didn't know that character had a sister. Well, now they do. Or I didn't know this character is an aunt or related to this person. Well, now you know. It gets confusing after a while knowing who's related to what, who was in what franchise, who was in what movie. That you kind of get lost, and that just comes down to, I think, a big problem with this movie in general, which is pacing. This movie has a big pacing problem. You'd have the moments where Jason Momoa is wonderfully hamming it up, having a fun time, adding honest life to this movie that otherwise wouldn't have it if he wasn't just playing the Joker and just going ham. Because otherwise, it'd just be dreadfully, almost kind of boring. The chases you've seen it already beforehand. And then they swap back and forth between different characters in different locations. And it just kind of hurts the pacing as they keep doing it. And then finally, as you think the movie's kind of wrapping in to kind of maybe get all these characters back on track to everybody else, the movie then has its ending that feels, as Marley said, very unsatisfying. And there's no sense of closure. And especially when, I think Marley and I were talking about this before we were streaming, they said they were going to do a trilogy beforehand that was going to end the franchise. For them to be like, oh, but on the movie that we're going to do to kind of end this franchise, we're going to have another one to finish this. We're going to do 2 more movies. Then we'll stop, we promise. Even though we said on the 7th one we would. We changed our minds.
It's like, if you're making money on these movies and you like making them, just say that you like making them and you're doing this to make money. Like, stop lying to us.
We like hanging out. Yeah, if you just said, hey, we all like making money, we all like hanging out with each other, and this really does feel like I really like everybody around us, and this does feel like a family, and we like making these kind of movies, I'd respect you a whole lot more and be like, oh, okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
they don't.
Yeah, so to Marley's point about, like I said, this is supposed to close out. Gonna do another trilogy, and it's supposed to close out on the 12th movie. Originally said the next one was going to be the last one, the 11th one, but then Vin Diesel came out and said, no, we got one more after that one that's going to be. So he extended it. So yeah, I mean, it's funny that Brie Larson is in this movie because it feels like a Marvel movie, not only in the I don't give a fuck, the fuckness when it comes to the physics and all that other stuff. Actually, I think Marvel movies are actually more realistic than this. Actually, I don't even want to say
more
that.
grounded sometimes.
Yes. I actually think they're actually more kind of grounded than this. But in terms of, it feels like when you watch one of the Marvel movies you're not watching a complete story. You're just watching a movie that leads to another thing. That was one of the complaints I had with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumanium, was that it just doesn't even feel like a real movie. It doesn't even feel like a complete story. It's just like, we're just here so it can introduce Kang, and then so we can get to the other thing. That's what I kind of feel about this one with Fast 10, is that we're just here to introduce, Jason Momoa, and then build context for, the ground for the later other 2 movies. And it just, like you said, like Marley and Dusk, it just kind of ends without any real goals being accomplished or any real good, character stuff kind of going on. And watching another review of somebody talking about it, they compared it to like another trilogy, for instance, like something like Lord of the Rings, which, funny enough, Vin Diesel said that he is like J.R. Tolkien, like these Fast and Furious movies, you know what I mean, with all this lore and all this other stuff. He actually did kind of say that. But when you watch Lord of the Rings, even Fellowship of the Ring, which you know it's gonna be a trilogy leading into Two Towers and Return of the King, it feels like a complete movie still. Like, you know, characters have goals and then they accomplish and there's like a mission there. Here, it's like, I don't know really exactly what's being accomplished or what's really being done here. And then it seems like they're just moving from action scene to action scene to action scene with little bits of dialogue in between the next big action scene. Because you look at the character work here, there is no characters. I mean, there is no real good character. I mean, there is no, like, you know what I mean? There is kind of really nothing going on. They try to do a little something, you know, like at least with Tyrese's character, you know, like, you know, giving him a little bit more
Roman.
stuff to do. Who normally is the big, you know, he's the comedic relief of these movies, the goofball of these movies. They try to give him a little bit something, which I appreciate, try to give him a little more something to do. But a lot of actors, especially the older cast members who we've been with for this long time, they feel like they just kind of just sleepwalking through it mostly. I feel like it's the newer people who interject so much life, like John Cena, Jason Momoa, Brie Larson, Alan Richardson. I feel like when it's ever them on screen, it's like they're having fun, they're enjoying themselves, and then all the kind of other people are just kind of like, okay, you're just kind of there. What's your opinion on some of the newer people in this movie there, Marley?
Oh, I love Jason Momoa. I'm just going to repeat what everyone else has been saying, that he's basically playing the Joker, and I kind of like the whole kind of back and forth, but because the fact that Jason Momoa is kind of doing like this Joker-esque pansexual like villain is like super interesting, just because like having like a Joker Batman like dynamic, like Dom is like Batman because he's always grunting, so that totally makes sense. Just to have like that dynamic, I feel like totally works. And Jason Momoa, he's like, in my opinion, he's just doing all the heavy lifting here. Like if he wasn't here, I think that this entire movie would have fallen flat on its face. Because like, just to kind of add on to like what you were saying, how like there's no character development like anywhere in this movie. Like this movie had a really rough production history. Like Justin Lin left like 1 week into filming. He basically just said, he raised a white flag and just said, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. And you can really, I don't really notice that a lot, like in movies when you see like a rough production, like history, but you see it a lot with this, because it's like 4 different stories being told all at the same time, and none of them are actually like connected in either way.
Right.
So I tweeted out that the editors of Fast 10 need to be given a raise, because I feel like the editors came in and saved this movie at the very last minute. Like to me, like I love Jason Momoa, but the real MVPs are like the editors of this movie, just because they turned like just a complete pile of like BS into just something somewhat coherent.
Dusk, what's some of your opinions on the newer characters?
Yeah. No, I'm right there with Marley. I think, honestly, Jason Momoa is, if you imagine any other Fast and the Furious villain, anyone at all, who's like very grovelly. In fact, his a character in there, like that's almost like a tertiary antagonist, could have been, if they were the quote unquote main villain of the story, you would just be like, it's the same boring thing. Jason Momoa is having a fun time. He gets to be giddy and have fun and playful. And it's that sense of theatrical fun that I'm just like, yeah, you're just surrounded with a bunch of sourpusses. That just, Dom is just so, this family. And everyone else, Liz Ortiz, she's just been like, I'm a badass. Michelle Rodriguez is just, I'm a badass, and I don't really get to emote too much. And all the new characters do feel like, oh, okay, this is a little bit of something. They're like drops of water in a desert. Moments with John Cena and his interactions with the other characters, that actually feels kind of fun. He looks like he's having like a fun time being there in this craziness. and he's making the best of it. Everyone else feels like they're sleepwalking through their performances, and Marley is completely right. That's what I was talking about when I was mentioning pacing. This movie feels like it's 4 different movies trying to be together, and no matter what you're doing with it, no matter how much stitching they did to try and assemble it together, you still see the stitches, and it's very cobbled together because you know when the scene ends. It's honestly the most surprising thing to me is to knowing and cut, and oh, we're on this new scene that had nothing to do with anything else, but we're putting it in, and now we're dealing with this character, and it's a completely different tone, and we're dealing with this area, and it felt like 4 different ideas fighting for attention, and it never quite coalesces. Even when we get near the end, it just feels like they knew it, so they had that ending to just kind of go, and we're gonna get everyone together, and then we're gonna do what we're gonna do to set up an unfulfilling sort of ending, so that we can kind of bleed into the next movie. And to me, if you're going to talk about a story or a trilogy, usually when you have a good trilogy, like an example of the Lord of the Rings movies, even with the Peter Jackson's trilogies, each movie, even Two Towers, had a conclusive action point that had a catalyst and then a thorough ending of a character's, because characters had characteristics, they had maybe arcs, they reached a different point or had a view changed or seen something that didn't before that changed them or pushed them forward even more. So it felt like that movie coming before had an impact. And I'll be honest, that's my biggest flaw with this movie. I don't feel the impact I'm supposed to be feeling from all this, and it feels too light for that impact. They're able to travel around despite the circumstances that are happening, but the movie wants you to feel like much more damage is happening than there is. Like he's causing much more destruction than he is. And he is, but you don't really feel that from the Fast family because they come off and kind of rib and joke, and the tone is kind of like, wait a minute. Weren't we just in a situation where a character just got hurt or something happened? And I know there are certain characters that they continue to do the butt jokes, and I feel like on some moments in this movie, they recognize that. Like, they recognize, oh, we've been kind of going through the same thing. Especially, the only character I can say that gets really the most development is ironically Roman. Roman gets, like, the most development I've seen him get in a bit, and it's not even much. It's like a drop of water. It's like, oh, yeah, maybe, like, we could kind of listen to Roman for once, maybe, because he does come in clutch in a lot of the movies, whether we like to recognize it or not. Yeah. Maybe that's be nice, be him and Tej to maybe give a little respect to each other. But that's about it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to continue to sing the praises of Jason Momoa because out of all these Fast and Furious movies, I did rewatch a lot of them leading up to X. I don't think, can anybody say like any villain from any other Fast and Furious movie is that memorable? Can anybody say like they stand out at all?
I think Reyes from Fast 5 is pretty memorable, and the fact that they constantly like reference like Fast 5 like in 10, it like says a lot, just because Fast 5 is easily like everyone's favorite, so obviously it makes sense for like this franchise to continue to ride like that movie until people get sick of it. But I will agree that Jason Momoa is probably the most colorful villain for sure, and like if you watched a lot of the behind the scenes like leading up to this movie, he always talked about him being able to play a peacock. And you Josh, you mentioned at the beginning how like Aquaman, he's playing himself. What else?
Dune.
What else was he in? Dune. He's just playing himself, and I feel like with this character, Vin Diesel or whoever just went up to him and just said, "Hey, we're just trying to get this movie out. We don't want to delay. Just go wild and crazy." And Jason Momoa just understood the assignment and just like he checked all those boxes. Like one kind of to piggyback a little bit on what you were saying, Dusk, about John Cena. If I can say like one positive thing like about Fast 10 and what they learned from 9 is one of the big complaints from 9 is that John Cena he was a villain, and not like he's John Cena is mainly known for like comedy, and like when he's kind of like when John Cena's doing like that kind of gruff look, like it's just he's not really the strongest. And what I give what I give like these like the producers or just the people working on 10 like credit, they probably like went in and like watched Peacemaker and they realized, hey, this guy's really good at comedy, so let's switch him up and kind of like loosen up John Cena, and I think it worked out for the better.
Yeah, because in this, his main role is to take care of Vin Diesel's character's son, Dom's son, Brian, who they call Lil B, in this. So that's like his main job in this is to take care of the kid. And again, when it switches to them, and when it's the stuff with Jason Momoa, it's like I like that stuff. I think that's fun. It's actually again, it's characters. It feels like having fun. It's a good change of pace from what we're kind of normally seeing. So I did enjoy a lot of that. Again, like there's even certain things because this world is it's science. It's pure science fiction. Like it's like there's something that happens when they get on a plane. That's like some Spy Kid shit. That's like some you know what I mean. It's like okay, whatever. But I did like that stuff with him there. But Jason Momoa feels like a good threat to the family. He's like, to me, hey, you got this big family, and what happens when you can't protect everybody? And I feel that, but then you remember you're in the Fast and Furious universe, where even if somebody, quote unquote, dies, there's always a way to bring them back. You know what I mean? That's what we thought about Michelle Rodriguez. That was what we thought about Han, is that they're dead, and then all of a sudden, boom, they just show back up again. So it's like, that threat,
and not even just sorry.
Oh yeah, go.
Not even just that. It's like, yeah, Jason Momoa may be like he may play a really great villain, but in like 2 more movies, he's just going to be part of the family and just like part of the cookout. And Vin Diesel's just like, I have so much respect for you. I'm just like, that's why I can't take like this franchise seriously. Like,
right. I think the major problem I also had is there's a character in here of Cypher, Charlie Theron, where she's done horrible stuff to them, and there's just like a point where you go, why is she still alive? Like, you have her dead to rights in ways that you haven't in previous movies. Why is she still around? Why are you keeping her around? And then I knew it's not going to, Mara, it's not going to be Jason Momoa. They're going to have Charlize Theron. She's going to hang out with them at the barbecue with the last movie. Even though I blew the brains out of someone else in that movie, and I've done horrible things to your family, but I really respect you in the end. In the end, you help my family. And you're like, no, there's certain limits to what you're willing to forgive. But that's where I think it's leading to, like a mutual understanding, or Charlize Theron sacrificing herself for the Torito family. Or something like that, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, as nice as those little drops of water are in this movie's just one action set piece to another with no like hardly any bridge. It's like a tightrope, just barely stringing together this set piece after set piece, more so than some of even the other movies, and closer almost to Fast 9. I could see why Justin Lin just went, you know what? I'm done. I'm out. I'm just gonna. I'm putting up the white flag. I tried with Fast 9. Fast 9 was like me trying to be meta with it, but that didn't work out for everybody.
Well, there is a moment, like it is a spoiler.
Sure.
Like we won't mention it right now, but like maybe I can let you know like off stream. Sure. Dusk. Like the real reason why Justin Lin left, but. Just watch Fast 10 or just find like some of the spoilers like online. Right. Watch it on TikTok. Like apparently you can watch movies on TikTok now.
Yes, you can. People are getting wily and it's smart. Right. But you know what? I've been dogging on this movie, and I will say one thing. Just like most of the Fast Furious movies, I like the soundtrack is pretty good in the background. Mm-hmm. I like the look of the cars. They know their cars. I love the look. I like the styling. Some of the camera angles and cinematography is pretty good for the chases. And I did appreciate early on in the movie where when Dominic Toretto, oh my God, I'm saying names wrong today, is hanging out in his garage reminiscing, you get a little bit of a piano playback of the song that when I'll see you again, that they drove off of Paul Walker when they in Fast 7. So it was kind of touching, and he's looking at the past photos. I'm like, oh, that's nice, kind of like a little remembrance. I appreciate musical overtures and songs coming back, and kind of because they're a good way to kind of bring back memory, and you can recognize tunes to recognize scenes in movies or other things. It's a good musical medium to use. But other than those small things, I just wanted to have those brief positive moments to say that I'm not completely dogging on the movie. It's pretty much like every Fast movie. It just happens to have more problems, I think, than I think even more previous ones. Even if you are a fan of the franchise.
Yeah.
And like, I despite like also like I know this movie is like crazy over the top, and I feel like 9 was like it took that over the top to like the next level. Like,
yeah.
And I feel like 10 just grounded it just a little bit, where you kind of like saw a little bit of humanity like within these characters, but not to the crazy amount like not to the crazy amount like 9 did. It's just like what you described, Dusk, like with those little character moments, like with Dom like in like the garage, and you hear like the "see you again" and him interacting with Rita Moreno. I thought a lot of those character moments were really nice, and it kind of allowed you to kind of like mellow out, and then it just goes like full on balls to the
It goes
wall.
all in.
Yeah.
I would have liked this movie more if they had if they're gonna wrap this up in like a final trilogy. You need to like pull back, get to second gear again, and remind us why we've been watching these characters and how much they progress. Because I looked up, and I don't know if anyone's even realizing it. This movie's supposed to take place 12 years after Fast 5. So 12 years has passed. Little Brian is now basically 12, and he's and Paul Walker and Mia Toretto. They had I know his name's Brian. I don't care. I call him Paul Walker. I know they have 2 kids together that we hardly ever see. That's fine. He's retired anyways. It's just I wanted those little moments. Right. Yeah. He's a stay-at-home dad now. He's done his stuff. I wanted those little moments, those little character moments. And before we even had a moment to breathe, it's like, okay, next moment. And if that was done a bit better, it could feel like those character moments are being interrupted by Jason Momoa, like slowly crushing down on this family that's being built. But as it is, everyone's just flying all over the place, going place to place. Apparently, everybody has plenty of I guess like bases of operation that they just have because they had the money to do so. I guess so after all the events they've done.
Yeah,
they got a lot of miles on their credit card.
Yeah, they did. The High Mile Club.
To go to Rome, and then you go to Rio just like randomly. And like one thing that I will like give like this franchise credit to, like sticking to their roots. No matter how crazy and over the top this franchise gets, there's always at least one scene where it's just booty shorts, boobs, and street racing. So it's like,
they know.
Yeah,
they know. This is what you know. What Marley, I give that to them as well. That's what I was saying before. They understand people like the cars, people like the sexy ladies, and they like that bumping music in that soundtrack. And I can respect that they know what their audience is.
Yeah,
they know what you came here to see.
I mean, even though they do treat muscle cars in this like it's the Batmobile. Like when he hops in the car.
Yeah, true, they do.
Yeah, it's like he can come out, dropping out of the sky, landing on 2 other cars, and it's fine. The car is okay. Yeah. And it's like, all right, sure, why not?
Well, he even says it himself at one point in the movie. He says it clear as day. You made one mistake. He's like, you left me a car.
Yeah. I mean, the car is.
He's like, you didn't take the car from me. He's a transformer. That's his superpower. When he's inside that car, he's a super powered hero.
That's how this franchise just ends. It's just Dom transforms into the Charger, the dot.
I would accept that actually. He's now more machine now than man.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're a big Fast and Furious person, if you love these movies, is this going to be the final the line that just is you just draw in the sand and go like, okay, this is just too much. I mean, I don't know whether or not that's going to be for me. I think it's one of the weaker ones of these movies as I've seen. Like I said, with all the different issues of it, the cast of the movies, a lot of the older people who we've seen in the other ones, a lot of the older cast, like I said, it feels like they're kind of just sleepwalking through it and they don't really have much to do. Like Han really doesn't have anything really much to do here. He's kind of sleepwalking through it. Nathalia Emmanuel's character, because what happens in this movie is like Nathalia Emmanuel, Han, Ludacris, Tyrese, they're all sidelined for most of the movie. And part of these Fast and Furious movies is a lot of the ensemble, like all of them working together. And I get that, this movie, again, it's trying to set the basis of like, he's fracturing the family. Like Jason Momoa is attacking the family and fracturing. And I get that. But you kind of lose one of your biggest strengths of that. If like, it's funny enough. Yeah. The strength of this movie is family. I mean, that's what the hell is, it's the family. That's the big strength of this movie. So it's like you kind of cripple yourself when you don't get to see all of them interact and all of them kind of be together when they're kind of split up through most of it. Michelle Rodriguez has her own thing going on where she's got her stuff with Charlize Theron and then Tyrese, and then Vin Diesel's character is mostly just chasing Jason Momoa. So it's just kind of like, and it really is like Batman the Joker, you know what I mean? Like he even goes into one of his hideouts and it's like almost like the shit that the Joker would have, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So yeah, I feel like that is kind of one of the weak spots there of it. So it does help to have that energy from a lot of these kind of newer people who I would like to see return. Like Brie Larson, I think does a fine job here, as one of the government agencies. Like I like how they just call it the agency. Like even in G.I. Joe, they had a name. They at least came up with a name. Damn, they at least had Cobra. I mean, you can't come up with at least a cool name for this government. They just called the agency. It's like, damn, okay.
It's family. It's an acronym.
Family, it's an acronym.
Family,
family, the acronym.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah. And then, like I said, John Cena, like when it was him and them and then Jason Momoa, all fine there. So for me, I just kind of give it a lowish, kind of middle tier stream it. Like you might get some fun with some of the action scenes, like Dusk mentioned, like the cars and some of that stuff they do is fun, and like Marley mentioned the booty shorts, the music, the all drag race, and they try to bring that in there at least, kind of remember like, hey, remember when we used to drag race? Remember we used to do that? Okay, let's do that, and they do that. So yeah, so that stuff is okay. There's again, if you're willing to suspend disbelief with a lot of this stuff, like as you go with these movies, then you're gonna have to do a lot with this one as well. So yeah, for me, I just kind of give it a lowish kind of stream it. Marley, what about you?
I'm a big fan of this franchise just because of how crazy it is. Like I've said before, but I really just like whenever a new one comes out, I treat it like a family reunion. Where you just kind of like show up at the movie theater and you just kind of you go through all like the motions. It's like, oh, Tyrese, he's being like the funny guy. Him and Tej are being like the funny like cousins. Dom is just kind of like that grumpy like uncle that just kind of like groans and grunts throughout the entire time. And then there's some new like maybe you see like this like a new like son-in-law just like pop up like here and there like with Jason Momoa. You just kind of like see like these regular people that you see like every 2 years. You see it once and then you don't see them again for another 2 years. So it's like I don't like these movies aren't meant to be taken seriously. But I still think that they're fun to like go and see it in IMAX 40X, see it on the big screen possible because it is pretty much a spectacle. And but I would still give it like a low tune in. Like don't spend like the crazy amount like on like a weekend price. See it like a Tuesday matinee or something like that. But yeah.
Okay. Dusk?
Yeah, I'm kind of echoing your sentiments, Josh. And yours as well, Marlon. I'm kind of in the middle where I understand that these movies are more of a spectacle and kind of treating it as a family reunion. I could definitely get that vibe, especially with characters just knowing these people and they've known each other since 2006. It's been quite a long ride, and they've just continued to make these movies progressively, almost every 2 years. Like the biggest break they ever had was with Tokyo Drift, and it was like 3 years apart between before and after it. And then after that, it's just been consistent back to that 2 year grind. And there's something impressive about that, and a little comforting about it. And so for those people, I can definitely see why this franchise has lasted as long as it has. But at the same time, I do have I've seen a lot of action stuff. We've had our expectations shown that there are better ways to do this. Can be better written stories. There can be better written characterizations. There can be better setups for these kind of stuff. And I think that ultimately trumps my decision to give it kind of a low rental. There's really no reason to see this in a movie theater. If you check it out at the matinee, all right, but really, you'd serve yourself best just to check it out as a rental and just ease back, get yourself a Roni, kick back, and just and watch one of these movies. And if you fall asleep, you'll wake back up and you'll see you won't miss much in the middle. Someone has betrayed someone else. What about that person that fell in the water? They'll probably be the sequel. And then the only real thing that really brings the lower down to me is there wasn't like a final conclusion because they're setting up for other movies, and that ultimately hurts it in the end. Now, what they'll do for the sequel, I don't know, but that's just kind of where I am. But before we wrap up, I did want to ask you guys if you noticed. Did you know there are 2 Aquamen in this movie? Isn't that kind of weird?
Oh, Alan Richardson. He played him in the CW show. Oh, right.
Yeah,
Smallville.
he did. Yeah, he did in
know
Smallville.
that.
And then Jason Momoa almost dies in water and then comes back to life as like corrupted Aquaman. And you're like, that's a odd coincidence. I don't know if they know that. If that was a thing.
Jason Momoa's like, you shouldn't have put me in water. This is
exactly.
Now you unleashed my full power.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. They shouldn't have thrown him into water. They should have thrown him into fire. They didn't know. They didn't know. He didn't even know himself until he touched the water.
And I just think it's also funny. No spoilers, obviously, but don't you think it's funny that pretty much the entire Snyderverse is just reuniting in Fast and Furious?
Yeah.
As you had Fast 5 with Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Now you have Jason Momoa. And then, John Cena. John Cena isn't part of Snyderverse, but it's like
DC.
Part of DC verse.
DC.
Yep.
Oh wow.
So all we need now is Zachary Levi and Ezra Miller.
Ezra Miller, and then here's a surprise cameo. They bring us, bring Superman and Batman in it. A surprise cameo at the end. Henry Cavill in the end, and he just shows up. Oh, I'm Dominique's like long lost younger uncle. Sorry.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, like Dusk,
from Britain.
You mentioned it before, the racial ambiguity of a lot of these things, because you got Vin Diesel's son in this, Lil B, who's like, he almost looks black, like he doesn't look anything close to what Vin Diesel or the woman he had the child with.
Marley too.
I just see it as Dom Toretto just had a lot of baby mamas that we just don't know about. So that's supposed to be like Michelle Rodriguez and Dom's like kid, but
no,
I think Michelle Rodriguez needs to go on Maury. Wait, what?
That's isn't that the kid he had with the woman in the Fast Five, right?
Oh, Elena. Oh yeah, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, because they bring up that's a plot point in this one.
That's right.
I had to look that up, by the way. I forgot about that.
See, like again, way too many baby mamas for Tom.
And also, but even if that doesn't change anything, because if you look at the picture, you're like, oh yeah, but still, that kid's like way darker than what it would have been.
Like she was,
but who knows? Who knows?
She was white with blonde hair and blue eyes, and it's like what the hell?
And also to be fair for that kid, like that kid's having a blast. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah.
Like he got to play some video games. Like in the movie, he was playing like that really bad Hot Wheels video game, which is on brand, like just because that's what this franchise has turned into. It's just Hot Wheels, like the movie franchise.
If they never made Hot Wheels a series, you just put Vin Diesel in it. And he's just driving these Hot Wheels. You shrink him down, you turn him into like a Chinese action figure, and you just have him voice that, and you're like, all right, get behind the wheel.
You need to trademark that because that's Fast 10 Part 2.
Patent pending right here. Right here. Right. You heard it, everybody. Patent pending. Don't steal my idea. I'll sue you.
Right.
It's just funny that Vin Diesel, he's the most like, has the biggest hard on for these movies about like wanting to do more, and he's so always pimping.
He loves doing them.
But it never seems like
what else does he have?
It never seems like watching the movie because he always just seems displeased every time he's in these movies and just constantly just mumbling through most of it. Like with him as Groot, you get more emotional of a performance out of that with him saying 3 words, and you do all of any of this stuff in Fast and Furious for the last 6 movies. It's like, what the hell? But yeah,
he loves people, and you got to look at someone's actions, Josh. Sometimes someone can love somebody without openly saying it or enjoy something. You just, that uncle that you go to your barbecue who looks like he's having a bad time and he's just sitting back drinking Ronies and he's just relaxing and he just doesn't say anything. That's just the highlight of the year for him. He loves spending time with everybody. He doesn't know how to say it outwardly. But he's the last one, he's the first one to show up and he's the last one to leave. He doesn't want to leave. And if you ask him to stay the night, he will stay the night. Probably he doesn't want to ask you.
Probably because he wants some more food. That's probably what it is. He wants to get
exactly.
He wants to get the leftovers.
He does. However you want to take it, brother.
So we have 2 streamings and a tune in. Lowest kind of tune in for Fast X.